to horror in the Middle East, where Israel has ordered a complete siege of Gaza, cutting off food, fuel and water as it prepares for a massive ground offensive within the next 48 hours. Well, in response, Hamas says it'll begin executing Israeli hostages and post videos of the brutality online for every airstrike in Gaza. The terror group launched a devastating surprise attack on the Jewish state over the weekend in what's been described as 9/11 and Pearl Harbor in one. More than 700 Israeli soldiers and civilians were shot dead or killed in rocket attacks as waves of militants breached defences and surged across the border, blindsiding the government and security forces. In one particularly sickening instance, Hamas militants stormed a music festival in the desert, opening fire on partygoers after switching off the electricity. According to survivors, jeeps full of gunmen pursued their victims across the sand, unleashing a hail of bullets. More than 260 bodies have been recovered. Closer to home, more than 10 Britons are feared dead or missing. A family in North London has been left devastated after 20-year-old Nathaniel Young, who was serving with the Israeli army, was killed by Hamas. The conflict has seen a rise in anti-Semitism, with the UK's chief rabbi saying every Jewish family is affected by the attack on Israel, calling it a time of deep grief and enormous worry. Police patrols have been stepped up across the capital after videos emerged of what appeared to be pro-Palestinians celebrating the atrocities. Having chaired an emergency Cobra meeting, the Prime Minister tonight attended a vigil outside Downing Street to mourn what's now being called Israel's worst day in history. This has been such a shocking story as it's unravelled over the weekend. And I'm sure I'm not alone in being absolutely glued to the news and to the telly this weekend and trying to work out what level of atrocity and what level of importance and significance this terrorist attack will take and you know, how long, what sort of repercussions there will be. But I think just taking it back to all the people who've lost their lives, if you think about the population of Israel, it's only about 9 million. So we're now looking, it's nudging 1,000 deaths probably now. If you translated that into, if this was an attack on Britain, that would be about 7,000 Brits dying in a day. If you think about the size of their population, the size of our population. If you think about America, talk about this being like 9/11, which was 3,000, a huge atrocity, it would be nearly 30,000 or more. If you think about, and I do think that that brings it home what a big attack this was. And then all the questions about how could it happen? Israel supposedly having the best defence, the best intelligence, the best security services, Mossad, the best army in the world. How did it happen? Who was caught snoozing? What will the ramifications be? And what will Israel do now? And then, of course, the issue about the hostages, because we know that Israel will do anything. It has had many hostages taken in the past, and it will go to huge lengths to get those hostages back. But this is different from other hostage situations in the past.
It's strikingly different. But the one thing that I think illustrates it well is to compare it with a 9/11 that has been done by many commentators, because this is one of the most hideous, barbaric acts we have seen for a long time. And, you know, can you imagine what state this country would be in if something like this had happened and 7,000 people, as you put it, were affected? But there's also, and you brilliantly summed it up there, so many different dimensions to this issue that we could explore and be here for hours. But the one thing that has over the horrors that I think is a real problem for Israel to try and deal with, their instinct is to absolutely go in, and I suspect they want to drive Hamas, rightly so, out of the Gaza Strip. And I fear that any casualties on the way would just be something Israel saw as a price for exactly for dealing with. But I understand that. But what I would say is that exactly what Hamas want them to do? And what are the ramifications of that?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, we haven't actually talked about the Palestinian deaths as well. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of Palestinians who've died in the reprisals already. And as you pointed out, and actually, funny enough, William Hague, writing in the Times today, has commented and said the same thing. Why have they done this? Why have they paraded the appalling atrocities? And why now? And he's essentially saying that they want conflagration over there. They kind of, you know, it's actually about you know, kind of blasting the whole lot.
They're almost saying, bring it on.
Bring it on, exactly
Yeah.
that. And he's saying that Israel has to actually stop it and think and have
Be measured
and have a measured response, which is must be so difficult.
How can
when
they do that?
How can you do that?
But
exactly.
This is the issue, because I do think, I mean, obviously the deaths have been tragic, but I have to agree with you. I focus more on the Palestinian deaths, because at the moment, 2.2 million Palestinians don't have access to water because the Israelis cut it off as part of their retaliation for what the small group of terrorists did. And for me, the bigger concern is how many innocent people are going to die on both sides of this conflict, but in particular the Palestinians, because they're the ones that, you know, are always going to bear the brunt of these actions. How many of them are going to die? And if you look at, if you put things into perspective, over half the population of Palestine are under the age of 25. There's an entire generation that's grown up knowing nothing else than this conflict. How easy would it be to radicalize them and, you know, increase the number of innocents that are going to die over the years? And for me, I think obviously people should educate themselves on what's going on in that region and the wider implications of this, but also trying to find a bit more of a measured response, because it's easy saying, yes, these are terrorists and they've done barbaric
you
things.
cannot say you're more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause tonight when
but
Israel has just had one of the biggest terror attacks ever seen.
It's horrific what has happened. But the point I'm making is we have to look at the longer and wider implications of this, and the people that will bear the brunt in terms of the gravity will be the Palestinians. But in terms of scale and size, it's inevitable.
I think Esther's correct in some of the things that she's saying here. I don't like comparing it to 9/11, because essentially what that is doing, we're trying to evoke the hatred and the feeling of, remember when this happened to you Americans?
Yeah,
this
war on terror, and you know,
but it helps us understand the impact
and the scale.
The scale. You can explain the scale without having to directly compare it to something that's already happened, which was also horrific. We can't just keep comparing atrocities to atrocities to try and evoke this hatred against people. Esther's completely right. 50% of the people who live in Gaza under 18, actually. I think it's actually 18 and under. So all they've ever known is Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu has said he wants to smash Hamas out of there.
Hamas are a terror group.
Let me finish what I'm saying. He wants to smash Hamas out of there. But there is nowhere for people to go. He says, if you're a civilian in Gaza, get out of there. Where are they going to?
Exactly.
There's nowhere for them to go.
The first duty of any government is to defend their citizens. Israel has failed on that now.
Yeah.
They cannot allow Hamas to exist as neighbours, having posed this threat to Israel.
That's a very good point. But you know who we should point the finger at? Iran, who funded these terrorists. That's the theory. These people didn't act.
But the horrifying development that's happened tonight. We know that they've taken those hostages. They are now saying that every airstrike that lands in Gaza is going to result in, you know, the killing, the beheading, whatever it's going to be, of one of these hostages. There are hundreds of hostages, and I've been thinking for the last 48 hours, what are they going to do with these hostages? Clearly, Israel is going to be attacking, but Israel won't be able to attack because they'll be putting their hostages in danger. And we know a lot of these hostages are women and children.
And they won't
We've
be all
seen
together,
them already being
which means they'll be
flaunted.
spread out, because Israel has a tradition, if you like, of leaving no one behind. Their instinct would be to go and get the hostages and bring them back. But that tension is now set against this need to square what's happening.
And what most people expected with the hostage is that the Palestinians would say, we want X number of prisoners to be exchanged, which is what happened with Gilad Shalit, who there was a negotiation for 5 years over releasing one man, and the Palestinians got 1,000 prisoners. So over the weekend, I've been thinking, well, they're going to be asking for 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 prisoners. That's clearly not what they're going to be doing. They're saying for every, I'm worried that those hostages are never coming out. They were simply being taken to be used as if you attack us, we'll kill a hostage. But I can't believe that they were ever not, Israel is going to attack. It has to attack.
But then if this now spreads further around the whole region.
To Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Exactly. In Syria, everyone else gets involved. We're not going to see the death toll stop.
No, but I think there's an interesting dimension we're not talking about. This is not 20 years ago. It's not even 10 years ago. In the Middle East now, Arab nations, the Gulf states, they're all doing business with Israel. They're looking way ahead to the future. They're looking 10 years down the road, the growth of the economy, they're investing in each other. We were getting very close to a situation where we had a very stable Middle East with Israel.
And a lot of people saying that's why. That's why this has happened now, because Saudi was about to recognise Israel.
Doesn't suit the terrorists.
And and Hamas didn't want that.